Well, just as the dolphins left the planet when it was about to end, and if you are a Douglas Adams fan, you'll know what I'm talking about, I am leaving Australia. So let me echo their sentiment and say so long, and thanks for all the fish.
Australia's Progressive Talk, Balls Radio, with Phil Dobbie.
And in this last edition of the podcast from Australia, soccer hooligans run amok in Marseille. John Dobbie has a theory on the cause of it all.
And they're not the only one. There are, as it says, the Russians, and apparently some of the local French were also involved in this. So, it's just idiots confronting idiots, brings on more idiocy.
Yes, idiots confronting idiots, bringing on more idiocy. Never heard it put more succinctly. Also, one of the biggest mass shootings in America's history, and already Donald Trump is using it to his political advantage.
And then he congratulated himself for all the congratulations he got for calling it right. And this is, again, before any of the information had come out.
Meanwhile, we'll hear about the son of the New Zealand Prime Minister, who seems to be leading the high life.
The Instagram shots that have appeared in The Guardian are just that, shots of his lifestyle, which some people may say, well, that's pretty lavish, and other people might say, well, that's in keeping with someone who's the son of a millionaire.
Yeah, half his luck. I'm the son of an ICI works accountant. Not much money there. I would be a self-made man if I'd made anything of myself. And we round off this last edition of Balls Radio from Australia with some of the best ideas we've ever come up with Brian Haverty.
First class is what we get now, and second class is, you're lucky if it gets through.
Well, maybe, we have means-tested postage as well. It could go upper class and lower class. Well, it's all about changing the way we do things. That and way more on this final edition of Balls Radio. I'm Phil Dobbie.
Australia's Progressive Talk.
Balls Radio with Phil Dobbie.
So this is it. This could well be the last Balls Radio. It'll certainly be the last one from Australia. We are packing up our worldly belongings, sticking it in a crate and shipping it to the last remnants of the British Empire. Well, we're moving to England, basically. It's too cold here in Australia. That's not the only reason. But look, it was 6 degrees this morning when I woke up, for goodness sake. I mean, England never has weather like that, does it? Surely. I'm yet to find out. So look, Balls Radio may be back. I'm not really sure. Haven't made my mind up on this. I'm certainly not giving up on podcasting. That is for sure. In fact, there's every chance very soon I'm going to be presenting a daily podcast with a bank, exploring what's happening to economies around the world. So every morning you'll be able to catch up first thing with what's happened on the international money scene, trying to dissect and make sense of what's occurring with analysts from the bank. I'm not going to mention the name of the bank just yet because it's not signed, sealed and delivered. But look out for that one. And email me, phil@ballsradio.com. if you want to keep in touch with what I'm doing. I'm also going to be, I can reveal this now exclusively to Balls Radio listeners, that Professor Steve Keen and I are going to be starting a weekly debunking economics podcast. Now, this is going to be a paid-for podcast. It's not going to cost a lot of money, but you're going to have to dip into your pocket a little bit for that one. But it's going to be worth it for Steve's insights. I'm not sure I'm going to contribute a great deal. I'm just going to be, someone he bounces off. But again, we are going to try and explain what's happening in the world of economics. So if you are the least bit interested in the future of mankind, and whether we're all going to have enough money to survive, then that's going to be one worth subscribing to as well. And also, there's a faint hope when I'm in the UK that I'm going to be presenting a daily business show for a talk radio station over there as well. But, you can never believe these things until they are a signed contract. But there's been a couple of meetings about this, and I'm hoping that will come through, which again is going to give me a chance to explore what is driving the world economy and to look at alternative ways of seeing the big picture, like, for example, modern monetary theory. A lot of people talking about this now, which could suggest, that the way the world is coping with low growth right now, largely through the use of austerity measures, is exactly the wrong thing to do. And also the political campaigns around the world, like those here in Australia, where the talk is all about reining in the government's budget deficit, could well be the wrong thing to do. And also the word deficit is a rather simplistic notion when we're talking about government money. I mean, you can have a household deficit where, if you spend too much money and you're not got enough money coming in, that's a deficit for sure. But, if you had a printing press downstairs and you're able to print your own money, you wouldn't have a deficit because you would just print the stuff. And when the government says it's running a deficit, it might actually be doing some good. Now, here's an argument you never hear from either side of politics, strangely. But, when you think about it, the money that the government is using, this deficit it's creating, is money it's spending, which means the government is paying other companies, and that money is landing in private bank accounts. Now, if you have a government surplus, a budget surplus, and you're the government, then that means you're taking out more money from those private bank accounts than the government is spending. So the amount of money in the private sector falls away. So you're inhibiting growth. So is deficit such a bad thing? Certainly running a surplus could be catastrophic, but a deficit, particularly because governments are able to create money. Currency is no longer linked to the gold standard, so expanding the money supply isn't a big issue unless it causes inflation. And that's the least of our worries. So stuff like that, modern monetary theory. There's some sense in all of this. There's probably a lot of counter arguments as well. There's a whole load of people, I'm sure, listening now saying, what a load of poppycock. But stuff like that is what I hopefully will explore on future podcasts and future radio shows, hopefully as well, once I'm in the UK. So if you want to stay in touch, phil@ballsradio.com is the email address. If you send me an email, I'll add you to some sort of mailing list. Or you can keep an eye on the Balls Radio Facebook page as well. We'll keep you up to date there as well. Now, look, I may well be heading to the UK after a decision has been made to leave the EU. And look, after this weekend, the Europeans might actually be glad to get shot of Britain, to get Britain out of Europe, because, of course, the Euro 2016 soccer championship is underway. And England fans have been rioting in the streets of Marseille. And now the Russians have been giving as good as they got, by all accounts, as well. And in the midst of it all, a football game broke out, apparently, which England almost won, but didn't quite in the end. That is such an English way, isn't it? They're in the lead, they get cocky, and then they lose their way. Now, look, in the olden days, the England fans, at least they had the courtesy to wait until the game had finished before the rioting commenced. But now, they can't wait to get started. This happened before the England-Russia match in Marseille. But, of course, it wasn't just the England fans. The usual argument comes out. They were provoked by the foreigners. Always the excuse. No, it wasn't me that was doing it. It was them. They provoked me. They said something nasty about my mum. You can't help thinking, these idiots doing the rioting, they were almost certainly all Brexiteers, weren't they? I'm not saying that means that all Brexiteers are likely to incite riots, of course. Some of them might even be relatively sane, although the evidence might be to the contrary. But look, you can't help thinking these people who think it's fun to go over to the continent and duff up a few foreigners are the same people who are saying we should keep all the foreigners out of Britain. So they're almost certainly Brexiteers. But you also have to wonder whether Richard Dawkins is right. He's the scientist who doesn't believe in God, of course. Well, probably like all scientists, you'd hope. But he wrote an article last week in Prospect magazine saying ignoramuses should have no say in Britain's EU membership. And he said he's including himself in that. He's no ignoramus, but he says he doesn't have a degree in economics or history. So how dare you entrust such an important decision to ignoramuses like me? He's talking to David Cameron there, I think. And it is a fair point, isn't it? Who is making the call on this? And hasn't the whole thing been trivialized? So in other words, what Richard Dawkins is saying is the referendum should never have been called. But it was, and it is looking more and more like it could all go wrong for David Cameron. Assuming he's true to his word and he actually does want Britain to stay in Europe. But, let's face it, I don't think he cares. He's a politician. He just called a referendum so people would vote for him at the last election. Pure and simple, I think. That's the extent of it. Well, John Dobby joins us from the UK for the last time today. Well, we're going to talk to him again later on, but, this is the last Balls Radio podcast with John Dobby, because he's got to be a casualty. I'm going to be in the UK. I can cover the UK. But anyway, let's start, John, with those riots in the continent. It's like the 80s and 90s all over again, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it'd be quite interesting because the latest news is that UEFA, which is the football body that controls football in Europe, and indeed the European Championships, are talking about taking sanctions against both Russia and England because of the behaviour of their fans before and after the match yesterday. The ultimate sanction would be that they would get kicked out of the championship.
Out of this tournament.
Which I actually support. I think it'd be great because it would do two things. One, it would actually show all the fans, the consequence of their actions. But two, being kicked out of Europe actually might influence our vote.
Because we'll see what it's like. in the most important thing that, as far as many people in Britain are concerned, absolutely. But what about?
But it would also take a lot of the commentators, sort of time away from Brexit or Remain, and actually, sort of the papers would be full of outrage at us being kicked out of the competition.
Yeah, but then you see they might go see what Europe does for us. Could help. You could argue it could turn the vote either way, couldn't you? But what about this? And there's always this talk, isn't there? The French police, they turn to tear gas too quickly. Those nasty Russians were provoking the fans. Is there any sway in any of that, do you think?
I don't think so.
They're just idiots.
From the violence I saw, that it was downright nasty, and you do wonder whether people. I don't know how people can sink to that level of violence. And there are now, we understand, at least 2 people are being critically injured as a result of this as well. So, it's in no means anything really sort of worth sort of crowing about. It's it seems to be that some people think that football hooliganism is a badge to be worn with pride, which I think is probably the same as these right wing idiots in the National Front and things like that. And
but why is it just soccer? Why is it soccer? I mean, why England rugby fans go overseas? They don't cause trouble. Why is it just soccer fans?
But so does Scottish and Welsh and Northern Ireland. Well, not Scottish this competition, but Scotland in the past, their fans have behaved impeccably. They get down and mix with the locals and just savour the atmosphere. It just seems to be the idiots the small band of idiots from England that are sort of guilty of this. And they're not the only one. There are. As it says, the Russians, and apparently some of the local French were also involved in this. So, it's just idiots confronting idiots, brings on more idiocy.
Yeah. So it would be interesting if they did pull Britain out of England out of it, wouldn't it? I mean, it would...
It would be, yeah, but... It would, but it's interesting. They call football, soccer, a gentleman's sport played by thugs, whereas rugby is a thug's sport played by gentlemen.
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, and they also call it.
And while we're on that, we have to say that England had a rare win in Brisbane, the rugby team.
Yeah. Unlike, this game against. It was the soccer. If we look at the result of the football game in Marseille, that was typical English soccer, wasn't it? That they were leading right until the end, and then they gave it away. It just became too cocky, maybe.
Well, I don't know. They'd done everything. They had tried everything.
Just not good enough.
They did dominate the game. They should have had about 6, but only got the 1. And then you always say about England, if you're trying to defend a 1-0 lead, then if your defence is not good enough, there'll always be that chance that they'll sort of get this goal towards the end, which indeed happened.
Sneak one in the last couple of minutes. Yeah. So I take your point though. There. If they do get pulled out of the tournament, which would be an incredible decision to happen so early in the tournament. Maybe it's a sign of what happens if Britain is no longer part of Europe. Geographically, Britain is still part of Europe, but does it mean England can play soccer against Wales and Northern Ireland and Scotland, perhaps, and that's about it?
Well, it would be interesting. But, so far, the Wales are still in there. In fact, they're heading up the group that England are in now. Northern Ireland are there. Their first game is against Poland today. And the Republic of Ireland are also in the competition. So there's plenty of British Island teams still in the competition.
Now, look, it was... Sorry, you saying?
I was going to say, I think it probably would be just some type of justice if England were kicked out, and it might make people think a little bit.
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think these people are capable of any clear thinking, are they?
The women of England would be rejoicing.
Do you think? I don't know. They're probably glad, their husbands are the oiks they appear to be. They probably don't want them back home too quickly, I wouldn't have thought. Now, look, it wasn't tear gas that was fired into the crowd in Abingdon in Oxfordshire. The Queen's 90th birthday celebrations have been a much more genteel affair. So, not lobbing anything that's going to hit anyone on the side of the head. Well, possibly could, but not causing any severe pain, like bricks and stuff, which were almost certainly being thrown in Marseille. What have they been lobbing into the air in Abingdon?
They have been lobbing in specially made currant buns.
Right.
4,500.
They could cause damage, actually, couldn't they? A currant bun?
Could do. Well,
hit you on the side of the head?
Maybe it depends. If Mary Berry was to cook them, possibly not. But if I was to make them, yes, they'd probably be worse than bricks.
Absolutely. Yeah, the French would be, if the French police are there, they'd be lobbing their tear gas straight away, wouldn't they? So this is...
This may be an idea, sort of go to the French and say, look, the British don't respond well to water cannon and tear gas, but lob these currant buns at them, and you're in.
Maybe that's the way. So has it been? It looks like it's been quite a big affair. The Queen's 90th. I was watching some ceremony on TV for about 10 minutes, which involved some people playing drums for a while, and then some horses came on, and I was thinking, God, I'm glad I'm not the Queen. She has to sit through the whole bloody thing. It seems to go on for a few hours.
All these soldiers watching around in stupid uniforms.
Yeah, jeez, they're so tedious.
200 and 300 years ago.
Yeah. How can she sit through that? I mean, did she take a magazine? Did she have a mobile phone out? Was she on Facebook? I mean, it was just so dull.
She seemed to smile all the way through, though. Apparently, she likes horses, so I suppose that was
that would have helped.
That was part of it, yes. But no, it's been huge. The Queen's 90th has been absolutely huge. And as a dedicated Republican,
you don't care.
Well, no. I mean, let's put it this way: she's. And the thing is, it's not her birthday. Her birthday was the 21st of April.
Yeah,
her 90th birthday. Yeah, this is because she's the Queen. She gets 2 birthdays. And I hadn't realised this, but apparently, it's only if the monarch is born in what they deem the winter time. Yeah,
so they move it. Yeah, that's right. We talked about it last. I can't remember who it was, but it was it was a few hundred years ago. Whoever was the king back then decided he wanted to move it because his birthday was in winter. But Prince Philip it was really his birthday, wasn't it? I think his birthday's today or Tuesday or something.
No, his birthday was the day that the Queen's official birthday, which was Friday. Yeah, right. He was actually 95.
Yeah,
and 95, and here they were making all this thing. Oh, and the Queen had to have. Actually, came out of Westminster Abbey. St Paul's Cathedral for the service they held. They constructed a special balustrade for her to hold on to. As she came down the steps of St Paul's, and behind the Prince Philip was walking, not holding on to anything.
Right,
he's 95.
In sprightly fashion. Yeah, he's doing pretty well.
In sprightly fashion. Yeah, he's doing very well. Yeah. I mean, I'd say as a Republican, I have to have a tremendous respect for both the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh, because they do some fantastic things.
Well, I mean, we all like the Duke of Edinburgh because he always says the wrong thing, So
he does it on purpose.
Yeah, of course, sheer entertainment value, because he can.
Yes, and it's the only thing that would keep you sane. I was thinking about it. If you would, sort of, obviously they're a very successful marriage after all these years. But I would imagine the only way you could actually put up with the actual monotony of all his visits is to become a little bit outspoken like he is. So I think, yes, he commands my respect for that. If nothing else, and he is, as you say, great entertainment value.
Can't be many years left in either of them, though, can they? Really? But look, speaking of the Queen's birthday, of course, they have the honours list.
Well, you could have heard it here first, but I have a real sneaking suspicion. This is a 3-day celebration.
Yeah.
So
think it's going to be too much for them.
No. I think that she might, as the last part of it, actually say she's going to stand down.
Oh wow!
And hand it over to Prince Charles.
Gee, well that could be head it first on Balls Radio. Yeah.
That could be a balls-breaking story.
Do you know what? If we just make up news like that as often as we can, we're bound to be right sometime, aren't we? What a shame we're finishing just as we suddenly hit upon this marvellous idea.
Just a roll.
No, but if you're right, it will be a good one to go out on. But we've had the honours list, and for goodness sake, Rod Stewart, a knight, Sir Rod Stewart. What's going on there?
Oh. I brought this story up because it is this time. I mean, so the honours list seems to get more far-fetched every time, but this year's this crop for the Queen's birthday just seems to be completely stupid.
Well, they're running out of people, aren't they?
Well, must be. I mean, it wasn't so much Rod Stewart, but it was more Anton Deck.
Oh no, you're kidding!
OBEs.
Not OBEs. Anton Deck. Now, for those people who don't know, because I mean they are only famous in the UK for obvious reasons. They've been constrained from appearing anywhere else outside the UK because they're just not talented people, are they? Really? I mean, there are a couple of Geordie blokes who are mildly amusing, but no more than anybody else on the planet, who seem to just crop up on the TV all over the place.
I know.
Even more so now they've got an OBE. I mean, there's going to be no stopping them. Very sad. What about this? What about this argument that vote leave? They're saying the honours list has been manipulated. There's too many people who are supporters of remaining in who are in this list. They're clutching at straws, I think, aren't they?
I would have thought so, because these are the same people that says that the Queen is secretly a Brexiteer. So one would have thought that, and she has to, although she's not the one that puts these names forward, she has to actually sign off on them. So if there was anything like that, she thought, then you would have thought she would have some influence. I'm not signing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she'd be arguing the other way.
So Brian Blessed was honoured as well.
All right, okay.
Which is a good opportunity for you to give us an impression.
No, I can't do it. Tell everyone who Brian Blessed is, for those people who don't know.
Oh, he's a famous actor.
Yeah.
Who talks awfully loud like this?
There we are. Perfect. You've done it for me.
He started life on Z cars.
Yeah, he did too, didn't he?
It won't mean much to anybody either, will it?
Yeah, a long time ago. Now, look, of course, Britain, a lot of people do want Britain to leave Europe. Obviously, these are people who want to return to the good old days. Perhaps they want to return to the days of British imperialism. Maybe they think if we can leave Europe, then we can, no one's going to complain if we take back Hong Kong. Maybe reclaim America, for goodness sake. The Americans might be quite glad, actually, to hand it all back if Donald Trump's in charge. And, of course, India, that crowning glory of the British Empire. But maybe those who do want to revisit those days, I mean, they were dark days, weren't they? And, in fact, India is remembering now 150 years since the Orissa famine of 1866, which the British Empire can take some of the blame for. I mean, it's dark days of the empire.
It was hardly almost celebrated hour, certainly. And I think it goes to show that, sort of even when I was a kid, we were told that the British Empire had been a force for good across the world. But,
were you told that at school?
Well, I think it was sort of...
teaching changed in the 5 years between when you went to school and when I went to school in that case. But okay.
Different teachers, maybe. But anyway, I think we've long known that the British Empire was not all it was made out to be. But I think, this is very timely because it does show that, imperialism is just not a good thing, and this tragedy that happened 150 years ago, basically, there's parallels for today because the British approach was that leave it alone, it'll sort itself out, and that's very, very similar, I think, to the attitudes that seem to be taking over the migrants into Europe today. So this, look the other way and hopefully it'll sort itself out seems to be, sort of a sort of prevailing view of government, probably going back even further than the Orissa famine, but certainly seems to have happened since then as well. So
just how severe was that famine, the Orissa famine, 150 years ago?
There was, I think, millions were killed as a result of this, and it was. The irony is that they were exporting rice to the UK when their own people were starving because it was part of the big part of the fact that they were told that they needed to trade, and the East India Company very, very famous, of course, but again, it had killed off its India's once robust textile industry and encouraged them more into agriculture. And agriculture is, of course, dependent on the weather. And India, if one thing it hasn't got, is dependable weather. It gets lots and lots of monsoons that can last longer or shorter than necessary. So, there isn't always the rain that is necessary. And drought can be a big issue. And in this case, the Orissa, state of Orissa was hit by drought, which made the crops fail. And then the irony was that they'd been exporting rice to Britain, and we ended up, as part of our famine relief, when we finally got around to recognising that something needed to be done, we actually sent some rice back to them.
All right, that's nice. So. Very nice of them. Yeah, that's so, I mean, that was part of the problem, I guess, was that it just wasn't. They were making crops that could be exported rather than having rounded crops that could support the people of the country. It was all for export, as you say.
Yeah. And there are parallels today in Africa, where there is still, sort of shortages in countries, and yet they're selling, crops to the West.
Yeah,
for in the supermarkets and things.
In the interest of international trade. Yeah.
But it's interesting that this one is. I bet nobody or not many people will have heard of this famine.
No.
50 years ago, this Orissa famine. And in the same way, you could argue that this thing in the moment with Turkey, I'm not sure, but there was, in World War I, there was a lot of Armenians wiped out by the Turks, and most of the world recognised this as genocide, apart from the Turks. But, there's this belief of governments that they're not responsible for things, and that Turkish attitude is probably the same if you were to look in Britain today. Our British government would say, well, yes,
Of course, it's not our problem. Yeah. I mean, Britain is not alone in that. Of course, Australia as well has solved the problem of refugees by turning back the boats and ignoring the fact that those people still don't have a home to live in or jobs to go to. But not our problem anymore. Seems to be, very much the approach. So as you say, exactly like it was 150 years ago in India. Well, look, nothing to be very proud of. There we are. We've painted a very dark picture of Britain, haven't we? So an empire that didn't care, and football hooligans rampaging across the continent. And I'm going to go back and live there. What the hell am I doing?
and a country made up of a population who aren't fit to vote, according to Dawkins.
Exactly. So, that's right. There we are. They're a nation of ignoramuses.
Country populated by idiots.
Although he was including himself in that. I don't think Richard Dawkins is an idiot by any stretch. Anyway, we'll come back and talk to you a little later on. For the moment, thank you, John Dobby.
Okay.
And oh my God, I almost fell for this one from the East Asia Tribune. China bans interracial marriage for females. No plans to restrict men. They can carry on and marry whoever they want, but the Supreme People's Court of China passed legislation that will ban Chinese women from marrying non-Chinese men, with the law coming into effect at the beginning of 2018. The article says the problem is they face too many men and not enough women in China because of the one-child policy favoured boys somehow. I don't know how that would happen. Presumably the mums were having abortions, or worse, if they found out they were having a girl. The article says, I hasten to add, for every girl below the age of 18 in China, there are now 3 boys. I think that's a load of old pig swill, isn't it? So they have this imbalance, the article says, and they're clearly worried that if Chinese girls marry foreigners, it's going to weaken their race. Although the authorities have put a different spin on it. They say because we have such a shortage of women in China, we need to make sure Chinese men have as many opportunities as possible to find a bride. Now, it's been introduced to promote what they're calling social harmony, because they're worried that if there are not enough Chinese women available for marriage, men being what they are, there'll be increased levels of rape, the article says. So Chinese men can marry whoever they want. Chinese women can only marry Chinese men. Shocking, isn't it? If it were true. But this comes from the East Asia Tribune. This shows how easy it is to believe what you see on the internet, because it's almost believable, isn't it? And the East Asia Tribune describes itself as Asia's most trusted news. Well, maybe not. If you look at some of the other stories that they've got in there at the moment. Japanese lottery winner quits job by defecating on boss's desk. The woman who'd worked at the Osaka-based financial firm for the past 8 years had gone directly to the office of her supervisor and defecated all over his desk while he watched on in shock. Believable? Maybe it could happen, couldn't it? Singapore is going to send astronauts back to the moon. Singapore, all on its own. And this is where it starts to get unbelievable. China announces plan to hand Hong Kong back to Britain by the end of 2016. Apparently they are sick of the protests. They want to get shot of the place and give it back to the Brits. And if you look on their Facebook page, there's a whole load of people going, oh, I don't know, is the EU is going to be very happy about that. Were it true, mystery ejaculator at Bratislava pool party leaves 9 girls pregnant. Is that possible? I don't know. Talk about spreading yourself too thin. The long-range weather forecast. So just in case you're still thinking, well, these may be true. Long-range weather forecast predicts Singapore will have a white Christmas this year. A leading international weather consultancy has made the bold claim that snow will fall over the island nation in late December this year as a result of the ever-worsening La Nina effect. Yep, it's going to take a turn for the worse. Snow on the pretty close to the, in the tropics. Climate change skeptics have labelled the news as ridiculous, but other leading weather experts, who, based in Singapore, agree it's likely to occur. All of this from that one same website, the East Asia Tribune. So will interracial marriage be banned in China? No, I don't think so. Right, we're going to go to the United States now and Richard Kasmer. And we were going to kick off today by talking about the presidential race because we always do, don't we? They're fixated with it over there, and we are as well. The rest of the world is, if only because of the Trump factor. But, of course, we can't ignore what's happened in Orlando, in Florida, over the weekend. 50 people gunned down at a gay nightclub, 50 people killed, scores of people injured as well. Omar Mateen is the gunman. He is a supporter of ISIS, we're told. And, I guess we can't really say too much about this, Richard, apart from, this sort of thing wouldn't happen quite so often if it wasn't so easy to walk around with a gun. It would be much harder to commit this sort of atrocity. The rest of the world knows that. America's taking a while to latch onto that idea. But you also can't help thinking this sort of helps the anti-immigration camp, doesn't it? As well as, as much as it supposedly bonds together those ISIS sympathizers, the anti-immigration brigade. I mean, Trump is surely going to be able to use this to help his case, isn't he? He
already has. He came out and tweeted and saying, he called it, a Muslim terror attack before Omar Mateen had been identified as such. And then he congratulated himself for all the congratulations he got for calling it right. And this is, again, before any of the information had come out. No, Omar Mateen is an American citizen. His family is saying that this was a crime against gays because apparently Mr. Mateen was upset of seeing 2 gentlemen showing a public display of affection. And although the rumor is they're saying that he had called 911 and pledged his allegiance to ISIS. Now, whether or not this will give Trump a bump in the polls is, his nut job right-wing Islamophobes will come out and say, yes, this is the guy we want to back. But it's very short-lived because the issue is now against gays. If this is a soft target, if this is a terrorist attack, it still boils down to killing 50-plus gay people. So... And then you have to put this in perspective that we have in this country people in politics, people in religion that are calling for the execution of gays.
Yeah. Yeah, on all sides of religion, absolutely. And look, and this idea that this guy's a supporter of ISIS, and he may or may not be, he might be dedicated to the cause. But we had a madman who was shot down by police in our local shopping centre here in Sydney. He'd escaped from the local asylum. He wasn't mentally balanced, and he was praising Allah as the police shot him. But he's a white Anglo-Saxon. It's just what nutty people do in these scenarios.
Martin had no criminal record. He was a legal gun owner, and he had security certification. He was certified to be a security guard at anywhere, local shopping mall or whatever. So he's not meeting the criteria of a nut job, but he is meeting the criteria of the right wing contingent over here that have their own version of Sharia law.
Yeah. And, he's got that name, Omar. That's almost certainly on Donald Trump's list of people who have to leave the country. If you're called Omar, off you go.
I grew up with people named Omar. That's not necessarily an Islamic name. That's a French name over here.
Yeah. Oh, well, try telling that to Trump. Let's talk about the rest of politics, though. Hillary Clinton met with Elizabeth Warren this week. Now, Elizabeth Warren, she's a senator. She's from the left side of the Democratic Party. So this is a sign, surely, that Bernie Sanders is having some impact on her policy approach. She's moving a little further to the left, perhaps.
Yeah, this past week we saw Democrat Hillary Clinton lock up the presumptive nominee status by handily winning 4 out of 6 primaries over Bernie Sanders. Sanders just shy of conceding defeat. He met with President Obama, came away with a pat on the back and a scripted press release on how he will support Hillary Clinton in defeating Donald Trump. Then the president, Vice President Joe Biden, and Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren, who many have touted as Bernie Sanders' supporter for her just dedication to fight Wall Street, just like Bernie Sanders. Well, she came out that day and gave a lengthy, scathing speech blasting Donald Trump as a racist, a disgrace, a fraud, a cheat, and a thin-skinned bully, to name just a few. And it was pure poetry, Phil, and possibly a signal that she is on Hillary Clinton's short list to be vice president.
Right.
Well, Trump wasted no time in proving Warren's point, again, by degrading all Native Americans and calling her Pocahontas. It's a racist reference to Warren's Cherokee lineage, which then fired up the rumor mill that the GOP is once again planning a coup d'etat at the Republican National Convention next month to pick anybody other than Trump as the GOP candidate. So,
do you think Donald Trump's actually going to go to that to that convention?
Yes, he will not miss an opportunity to showboat. Sure, this is his coronation. If leading up to the convention that there is really no sign that they're going to helicopter in Mitt Romney or somebody else, he will show up and he'll gloat and he'll bloat and bang his chest and say he's the savior. And they'll go along with it, Phil.
So, and at that convention, they're going to choose who is the vice president, presumably. And does Donald Trump? How is that decided? Is that a vote, or does Trump decide?
The candidate decides. The candidate can name. But it's also we talked about this before. It is essential, even though Clinton and Trump are the presumptive nominees. It is essential that this is where the delegates now show up from all the states, and then they cast their deciding vote. Right now, it's like, yeah, okay, we're behind you, but it's all a moot point until they really sign, the ballot that they are for or against Trump. So in the meantime, though, the word is on the street that the self-proclaimed multi-billionaire Trump is short on campaign cash to effectively battle Hillary Clinton from this point on. A recent campaign finance disclosures show that Trump is trailing Clinton in financial support by about $200 million. Now, he's been largely self-funded, and he's also been running an improvised campaign that has failed to attract the super PAC money and money from the usual fat cat right-wing donors. Now, his boots-on-the-ground staff is just a fraction. He just has 74 people in his entire staff compared to Clinton 732. Now, you couple that with his failure to secure some top-ranking Republican politicians, and he's refused to talk to the GOP as a party. He has yet to go to the House and Senate and address them, or even in private conversations to lay out his platform and if they agree with it. So it's no wonder that he's become this persona non grata with everybody except his paid sycophants.
So this is my point about, is he actually going to go to this convention? Maybe he'll say, well, it's just a waste of time, particularly if there's going to be talk of how they topple him. He might be the elephant in the room, but he just might not want to be there.
If he doesn't go to this convention, he is toast. He really is. They will have no choice but to put somebody else in there, whether it's Chuck Norris or somebody else in the wing.
Someone more plausible, for example.
Yes. Yeah, no, he doesn't show up to this, he's gone.
So just, and we will talk about something Hillary Clinton said this week about Donald Trump and whether that rings true in just a second. But I just want to go back to this Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders thing. I mean, it looks like Bernie Sanders has actually, and I know you're a big Hillary Clinton supporter, but Bernie Sanders, through this whole thing, has done some good, hasn't he? Because he has actually rounded off the Democratic Party. He's kept the other side of the party happy, and that's probably where a lot of the votes are.
Well, he has. He's forced Hillary Clinton more to the left than from the center. But again, it's in all of his rhetoric and all of his excitement building, he never really said how he was going to pay for free education and health care. So that was the issue, is that Hillary Clinton is more meat and potatoes. She knows what she's doing. She knows what she wants, and she pretty much knows what the country needs. Now, Bernie Sanders goes out there and just the opposite, but still similar to Donald Trump in getting people riled up that don't want the status quo, even though Bernie Sanders has been a career politician. It's still pretty much air.
Yeah, so he's big on the philosophy, but not so good on the practicality, is I think what you're saying. Isn't it going to be interesting if Elizabeth Warren was the vice president, having a female president and a female vice president as well, the women taking over the roost?
It would be wonderful. We're due for it. We're overdue for it compared to many other countries in the world. So and she's such a firebrand too, and she has no dirt in her background. She is a Harvard professor. She has been in the legal profession for many years. She's a scholar, and she really knows how to kick ass.
This is Elizabeth Warren you're talking about, or Hillary Clinton?
Yes.
Warren. Yeah. So Hillary Clinton this week said, speaking of Donald Trump, this is what she said: "I'll leave it to the psychiatrist to explain his affection for tyrants." Because, of course, he was talking in favor of Kim Jong-un at some point. So talking about psychiatrists, I mean, it was a fair point to talk about psychiatrists and Donald Trump. Have any psychiatrists come out of the woodwork to try and explain, just how this man's brain works? Has anyone risen to the challenge?
Oh, yeah. No matter how much the media relies on the shop-worn go-to story of a particular candidate's psyche or the mob mentality of a political party constituent to cast a vote against their best interests, it's supposed to be only the armchair Sigmund Freud's that offer their unqualified opinions and not licensed practitioners. And the reason is, of all things, this ethical rule. But when did ethics ever beat ego? The restriction to prevent mental health professionals from publicly diagnosing somebody who is not their patient, like Donald Trump, for example, it stems from a 1964 presidential election when Republican candidate Barry Goldwater was the subject of an article in the now-defunct Fact magazine. Now, the magazine asked 12,000 psychiatrists if they thought Goldwater was psychologically fit to be president of the United States. Now, nearly 10,000 of those 12,000 didn't respond. 571 said they didn't know enough about Goldwater to make a determination. 657 declared him competent, but 1,189 psychiatrists declared him unfit for office, which the magazine then ran as a headline with the article that tagged Goldwater as everything from paranoid to a dangerous lunatic to having mom issues. Well, Goldwater sued the magazine and its publisher and won a pantload of money. So then the American Psychiatric Association implemented this rule, stating that it was unethical for a psychiatrist to offer a professional opinion unless he or she conducted an examination and had been granted proper authorization for such treatment. However, not all mental health professionals agree or adhere to it, because being asked, which they are now being asked in en masse, to offer a professional opinion about a candidate's public behavior while trying not to offer a diagnosis is impossible, if not disingenuous. So they are. I mean, the psychiatrists are coming on, and they're clearly saying, giving their opinion on Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, or Donald Trump. Now, it's also important to know, Phil, that the Goldwater rule has never been enforced.
Right. So they can say what they want, in other words.
Exactly. They can say exactly what they want and do.
Right. And I'm sort of guessing that those who have come out of the woodwork, I mean, it's perhaps not fair on Donald Trump because you could, I mean, but I'm guessing that the psychiatrists have come out and said, yeah, this guy isn't fit. And that would be putting it mildly, wouldn't it?
Well, what they do is to skirt that, is that they'll say he shows the classic signs of a narcissist, or somebody with similar behavior to a dictator like Mussolini and Hitler. He gets thrown into the bathwater.
So I'm not going to say he's not fit for office. He just behaves like a dictator, and he's a narcissist. But I'll leave it to you to decide whether that is suitable to be president of the United States or not.
That's how they get away with it, Phil. Yes.
Draw your own conclusion here. All right. Okay. Well, look, we'll come back in 20 minutes or so and talk more. For the moment, Richard Casman in the United States, thank you for your time.
I'll be here in the straitjacket.
Balls Radio with Phil Dobbie.
Now we're going to talk about the New Zealand Prime Minister's renegade son. We're calling him Mad Max. His name is Max Key. Mad Max Key. We'll talk about him soon with David Campbell from New Zealand. Look, the Greece story keeps bubbling along in Europe, although it's not headline news. It was, of course, when it seemed that they were likely to default on their country's massive debt. But now they barely rate a mention in the news, even though their country really is being raped by financiers as we speak. Now, there's absolutely no doubt they've had their structural problems. They've had people evading tax, people living on welfare. We've had big shipping tycoons paying nothing to the country, little coming in the way of tax, but they still had an economy to run, an economy that had to compete. Now, of course, as part of Europe, as part of the Eurozone, with no control over its exchange rates. So here was a country that lived off cheap holidays and cheap exports. It lost its price advantage when it joined Europe. Living standards didn't go up. People struggled, and they still do, with austerity measures seeing off any hope of growth for this country. And even though it's not in the news anymore, it's not getting better. It's getting worse for them. Those people who have given them the cash to try and see them through are wanting their money back. This includes the European Central Bank and the International Monetary Fund, and they're pushing for harsher and harsher measures. Just how much more can the people of Greece take? Because now they're not just happy taking money off the people of Greece, they now want to sell off more of Greece. There's a privatization agency, which the creditors have demanded stays in place for, wait for this, 99 years. And this privatization agency is selling off beaches, islands, hotels, golf courses, historic properties. There's going to be very little of Greece left for the Greek people at the end of this. And they've got 99 years to sell all of this off. Can you imagine how much is going to be left at the end? This could be the first country in the world which is almost entirely sold off to private enterprise with 99 years to work on it, selling it off bit by bit. I'm pretty sure the people of Greece will be totally against this idea. In fact, we know that, from the little media coverage there is, we know that they are. It certainly doesn't sound like, the dream of a united Europe, does it? Which was what was behind the creation of the EU in the first place. More than, look at this, 500 islands, large tracts of Greece's pristine 16,000-kilometre coastline is on the list. The full details of exactly what is on the list is going to be revealed in the next few months. It's not going to be good news for the people of Greece. And, of course, a lot of people in Greece remember the German occupation during the Second World War. If they don't remember it firsthand, they certainly remember the tales. And that's going to be making all this that much harder. The Germans now are just buying Greece. They suddenly made a huge mistake, didn't they? In 2001, when they joined the euro. Since then, what have they achieved? National savings have nosedived. Youth unemployment has skyrocketed. GDP per capita is lower than it was when they joined, so the country isn't any wealthier. And now they're having to sell the farm. And it's happening with very little attention from the rest of the world. It does make you wonder whether a unified Europe is such a good thing after all. I don't see any problem with a European government, a central government for Europe, which just adds another tier that can give recommendations on laws and that sort of stuff. But the idea of a single currency for Europe has just been a disaster for countries like Greece. I don't see how anyone could argue any other way. But look, so long as Europe's there, Britain, of course, was sensible in not joining the euro. And so long as the EU is there, I reckon it makes sense that Britain stays part of it. I mentioned earlier that Richard Dawkins said he didn't know whether he was for Brexit or against it. He just knows that the decision shouldn't be left to people who don't know what they're talking about. And he was including himself in that. Well, look, so James Dyson is someone who has taken a position. He reckons Britain is better off out. He said that Britain could not trade, the idea that Britain could not trade successfully outside the EU was absolute cobblers, in his words. Well, John Dobby is back with us. So James Dyson, I'm presuming James Dyson, he's the man behind the Dyson vacuum cleaner.
The bagless vacuum cleaner, yes. He's the inventor of that,
and he's a Brit. I didn't realise that. So,
and he's a Brit, yeah. So he's the inventor of the bagless vacuum cleaner, and has made a lot of money out of it because effectively they are very, very expensive. Bagless vacuum cleaners, far more than their competition. But I think there's an element of hypocrisy here because he's one of his arguments for getting out is that he says. He criticised the EU's free movement for not allowing the talented staff he needed to work in the UK. I'm not quite sure what he means. I think he means that he can't bring in cheap overseas labour to populate his factories.
Right.
But this is also the guy that, because he, several years ago, moved all his production to China because he claimed that he couldn't get... talented staff. What he meant was...
So what he's saying is the Eastern Europeans aren't cheap enough. The Chinese are even cheaper. Is that what he was saying?
I think that's part of it, yes.
Right, so it's just sour grapes on his part, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I think there's a huge amount of that. And the other... businessman, because it's difficult to find a businessman who's for Brexit, but Sir James Bamford, who's the owner of JCB, that makes all the diggers and things like that. Hugo will like that, but he's very much a get out because he believes that he can do a lot more business. But that's not surprising because he sells his JCBs mainly outside of Europe.
Right.
So
I mean that's that is a fair argument, isn't it? If you are trading outside Europe, then and you're not really selling within Europe, then you've got that complexity that you've got to organise trade deals with Europe.
But all bar the fact that if we come out, I think that our economy will tank. I really do. I think we'll basically most of our industry at the moment is financial services. I think they will desert us. You'll see London becoming, sort of a ghost city in many respects. Our prices will go up. The pound, our prices will go up. The pound will tank.
Yeah.
You might think that would make it easier then to sell into the rest of the world, but I think our costs will become so expensive that it'll make our products too expensive.
Well, it's going to be whatever happens, even if ultimately it doesn't have much impact. In the short term, it will, because I think, as you're saying, the pound is going to nosedive, and that's going to make it, as you say, in theory, will make it easier to export stuff, but there's not going to be agreements in place to manage those exports to Europe.
No, and the cost of manufacture, our power, our electricity, gas prices will go through the roof because they're priced in dollars. Everything will go up.
Yeah,
and I think.
Here's one thing I've found hasn't been argued so far, that aside from the finance industry, Britain's main export is really components. It's components for machines. And presumably they are feeding components, and for cars and, whole myriad of things. So Britain is a component manufacturer by and large. You would have so it doesn't make finished goods. It makes the bits that are sold to companies that are making the finished goods. And you would have thought that a lot of those finished goods are made on the continent. If you are a component manufacturer, you need as little paperwork as possible and no tariffs. You need that stuff to move as quickly and easily as possible to the places where this stuff is put back together
for the just-in-time delivery. And that's you won't get that because despite these Brexiteers saying, well, Europe needs to trade with us. We're one of its biggest customers. We're not, in fact, one of its biggest customers. They're one of our biggest customers. But and the fact is that Europe, if we do leave, they'll want to set an example so that others don't choose to follow Britain's example. So they will impose as much as they can to make it very difficult for Britain. So there will be tariffs. There will be trading difficulties, and I think you'll see the big manufacturers that are currently in this country, Toyota, Honda, they're here because we're part of Britain, and it helps them to sell into Europe. All those factories, Nissan, they'll go abroad, and as you say, we may be making the odd component, but selling to what? To where? I have no idea.
Well, that's absolute cobblers, according to Sir James Dyson. But on the other side, 13 Nobel Prize-winning scientists have said getting out is too big a risk, and that's the argument, isn't it? It's a risk. Who really knows? Does anybody really know? But there's this element of risk, and 13 scientists have signed their name to Britain staying in Europe.
13 Nobel Prize-winning scientists.
Yeah.
Yes, so
top-notch people.
Scientists, top-notch people, including Peter Higgs, who predicted the Higgs boson particle. So, yeah.
So there's a bit of brain power on that side of the argument.
I think so, and Professor Stephen Hawking as well is saying that Brexit will be a disaster for the UK for science. And I think the main butt of their argument appears to be that a lot of the funding for research, for proper research, is funded by the EU. And the Britain itself is probably, if we were to leave, then the plunging economy would mean that there was less money available for science. So they think that their research grants would probably be cut. I think they're probably right. Yeah. Well, we wait and see. But sadly, though, I mean, the Independent is now saying there's been a massive swing in favour of Brexit. Just over a week to go, 55% in their latest poll intend to leave. But I mean, we can look at that. Of course, Britain doesn't have a great track record on opinion polls, so maybe we should take that with a pinch of salt. Who knows really how it's going to go? But I mean, clearly it could go either way. No, and there was, I don't know whether you caught the farce this week, the sort of the deadline for actually registering to vote was earlier this week, and they had to extend it by 2 days because the computer crashed.
There we are. Yeah, well, that's British administration for you, isn't it? So it's going to be very satisfying, though, if you are a Brexiteer. They must be very satisfied that in now, just over a week's time, all the ills of society will all vanish almost overnight, and incredibly, as a result of this decision. The world is going to, the climate is going to be warmer. People are going to be happier. Food is going to taste better. There's so much resting on this decision that Brexiteers' lives will be lifted out of clearly this quagmire that they're experiencing at the moment, and it will be so much better for them. I am happy for them if it goes their way.
Lucy in the sky with diamonds, as they would say.
Well, you think they're all on drugs?
I think they were.
Might be around that. Look, finally, is
that was going to be my sex and drugs and rock and roll.
Yeah, well, that's
we've had the drugs. We've had the drugs and the rock and roll.
Yeah, let's get to sex. Okay, and this is the point: is Britain now getting blasé about sex scandals? Because it's always been the fodder for tabloid newspapers. Conservative MP gets caught with his trousers down, possibly wearing his wife's thrilly knickers. He steps down out of embarrassment. The tabloids can claim another scalp. But you know what? These days, that's not happening, is it? MPs are being found, the sex scandal is happening, but MPs are just carrying on regardless. What is the world coming to?
Exactly, and it's more the French attitude. I think the French have long allowed dalliances amongst their politicians to go basically unnoticed, unchecked, as indeed the Italians did with Silvio Berlusconi.
That's right, positively embraced.
Positive. But it appears to be here that, as happened in the 60s with the Profumo affair, where John Profumo, who was the Secretary of State for War, had to resign after he admitted that he'd lied to the House of Commons about his relationship with Christine Keeler, who was a 20-year-old prostitute. And that his seat was up. So they had to hold a sort of
by-election
for his seat.
Yeah.
By-election, yeah. Whereas these days, the latest Conservative is Steve Double, who's quit his post but not his seat after a public admitting affair with his assistant. So, there are, and indeed as well in the SNP, 2 MPs were exposed as having had an affair with the same journalist.
Yeah, at the same time?
At the same time. Maybe,
possibly.
no, it doesn't say. I think that possibly might have made more of a splash in the press, I think. But they sort of, again, quit their position but not their seat, so...
Right.
Things are changing a little bit.
Yeah, there we are. Britain is getting used to sex. Who'd have thought it? Yeah.
Good grief.
All right. Well, we'll call it a day there. And, do you know what? Even if... so people have been asking, will I be doing Balls Radio when we're over in the UK? And I don't know the answer to that just yet, but I'll be talking about Britain. I don't need you. I'll be over there.
I don't know, but if we come out of Europe, I think Balls Radio may be the only news channel left.
Possibly, that's right. The only sensible source of news, perhaps. All right. Anyway, look, you and I will.
I think we should both do it, and we should invite Richard Dawkins.
Yeah, the 3 of us, absolutely. Yeah, and a Conservative MP and a prostitute, just to add a bit of life to the whole proceedings. You and I will certainly talk anyway, because we're going to be living possibly around the corner from each other. It's just that we won't have the Balls Radio listeners. They can just come to the pub and join us. Probably not much. Probably fit them in easily into a pub. I would have thought somewhere in the Surrey countryside.
Wouldn't even need to be a big pub.
No, it's just a small affair. Absolutely. Good to talk. Anyway, thank you for your help on Balls Radio over all these months.
And goodbye to our loyal listeners.
Yeah, just put the S in brackets just to be on the safe side. All right.
Yeah, just in brackets.
John Dobby
Bye now.
in the UK.
Balls Radio.
Now, we don't have any big ideas or any new big ideas. Anyway, let's put it that way on the programme. Normally, of course, we have What's the Big Idea with Brian Haverty, where we come up with 5 big ideas. No Brian on the programme today, but given that it is the last edition of Balls Radio, in brackets, perhaps for a little while, we're going to play towards the end of the programme some of the best ideas we've had on What's the Big Idea. 5 or 10 of the really good ones. And that's how we'll go out today. Let's go to New Zealand now, though. Now, Mad Max is the 21-year-old son of New Zealand's Prime Minister John Key. And a piece that was in The Guardian yesterday shows that this is not a shy young man. He's got a huge following on Instagram. He wants to be a DJ. He's clearly not afraid to show off his body. Someone else is not afraid to show off his body, and we wish he wouldn't. David Campbell. He knows all about what's going on in New Zealand. He doesn't.
My body is a temple.
Well, what about this Max Key? I think we're going to call him Mad Max. Do you think he's an asset for the Prime Minister, or is the PM's son a bit of a liability, do you think?
Well, I had to laugh when you said Mad Max because, I knew that the first story was going to be about the son of the Prime Minister, Max Key. Yeah. But only one person in radio worldwide would call him Mad Max just to start off. But that's you, and good on you.
I don't know. I think it's going to stick now as well. But, I reckon it because, we all love John Key. I think he takes the centre ground of politics pretty well. So he's a likeable sort of chap, but he is a bit nerdy as well, isn't he, really? So I think, he's a merchant banker, for God's sake, just like our Prime Minister over here in Australia. So I reckon having a 21-year-old son who's a bit of a party animal gives him a bit more credibility, makes him a bit cooler, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, one of the things you've got to consider with John Key is the fact that he is, as you just alluded to, he is very wealthy in his own right. In fact, he donates all of his salary to charity.
Does he really? I didn't know that.
His salary as a Prime Minister because he is independently wealthy and he makes enough money from whatever investments and whatever he's got. So consequently, his son also enjoys the same sort of lifestyle, and the Instagram shots that have appeared in The Guardian are just that, shots of his lifestyle, which some people may say, well, that's pretty lavish. And other people might say, well, that's in keeping with someone who's the son of a millionaire.
Here he is, spending Dad's money. But it does, now there's a whole new story behind the Prime Minister, isn't there? Because is Mad Max going to go off the rails? I mean, he's already a party animal. He's only 21. When are the drugs going to start? The loose women. I mean,
they've already started, man. They've already started. Come on.
I love this photograph. There's a photograph of him on Air Force One, which most of us would be pretty excited by. He's just fallen asleep on the thing, presumably because of drugs.
Yeah, I saw that photo. I assume that it is the American Air Force One and not the New Zealand equivalent.
Did they have an Air Force One in New Zealand?
Well, there's a couple of planes still left in the New Zealand Air Force.
Air Force One and Air Force Two. It's like bananas in pajamas, B1 and B2. Yeah, well, maybe. Yeah, well, that's not quite so exciting, is it? Oh, well, anyway, there we are. I just wanted it to be known that there is a party animal in the Key household. He's 21 years old, and we're going to call him Mad Max from now on. But meanwhile, the daggy dad, the PM has been to Fiji, the first New Zealand Prime Minister to visit since the military coup, which was back in 2006.
Well, it's not just military coup. It's what's the plural of coup?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, because they had the coup, and then they elected the Prime Minister, and then it was seen that was against the Constitution, so he had to step aside. But he's back again, and he's been. But the point is, the Prime Minister they have now was an elected Prime Minister. There's no reason why the New Zealand PM couldn't have been there sooner, really, is there?
Well, I mean, what happens with these coups is that the military decide to come in for some reason. They then have their own man. Then the pressure internationally starts. So the military steps to one side and puts their own man in as Prime Minister. But you're right. The current Prime Minister has been elected. And New Zealand's there. I mean, Fiji is an important neighbour of New Zealand and Australia. And so, Prime Minister Bainimarama.
Bainimarama, isn't it? Not, but Bananarama is a lot easier to say. I think you should just change his name. I mean, we're all calling him.
We can call him Bananarama.
Everyone's calling him Bananarama. He has to get used to that, I think, really, doesn't he?
Right. Okay, fair enough. So Prime Minister Key is visiting, or has visited recently, Fiji. Fiji did call for New Zealand to sort of walk out or get out of the Pacific Island Forum, which is just a congress, if you like, of Pacific Islands, as the name suggests. New Zealand said, no way, we're going to be part of that. We're part of the Pacific, so we're going to be there. Thank you very much. So they did have a couple of little...
Why don't they want to be part of it, and why don't they want New Zealand? And they wanted Australia not to be part of it either. What was their concern over that?
No, their thinking is that Australia and New Zealand control the agenda too much of Pacific Islands, and they want to be able to do it themselves and not have the influence of big brothers. Yeah. Australia and New Zealand sort of getting involved. But, New Zealand and Australia both give significant aid to, many Pacific nations, and so they're saying, no, we're going to be part of the Pacific Island Forum. That's our right to do so, and thank you very much. Just because Fiji has said New Zealand should get out of it, Key said during his very platonic visit to Fiji, thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah. So was it loving the first degree?
That's right.
Not
very
quite.
Good. I see what you're doing here. This is very good.
Yeah, it all ties together quite well, doesn't it? Now, look, I know you like to talk about sport on this segment, and look, because it's the last time we're doing this, at least for a little while, I thought I should let you leave on a high note. Eden Park over the weekend, New Zealand 39, the mighty Welsh 21. Wales were in the lead as well, weren't they?
They did. They started off very, very well, and of course you've got to bear in mind that this is a sort of a brand new All Black team. I mean, New Zealand, the All Blacks went on to win the World Cup last year, and that was fantastic. So they're top in the world. But you must remember that after the World Cup, many of the veteran All Blacks, like veteran captain Richie McCall and Dan Carter and a whole host of others, all left. Retired from competitive rugby, so it's a brand new New Zealand team, and there's still a bit of work to go, but New Zealand, in the end, 39-21, not a bad scoreline.
So when they got a new team, did they just say, look, we want to show how good we are at rugby union in this country, we are just going to pick people at random for our team now, just from the street, and we're going to show that we can still beat the Welsh?
Well, I mean, the depth of New Zealand rugby is, as you know, it's a religion here in New Zealand, and the depth of New Zealand rugby is vast, and there are a lot of very capable people to call upon. The provincial teams, most provincial teams in New Zealand can beat many of the national teams worldwide, so New Zealand's not short on resources for the All Black team.
1953 was the last time Wales beat the All Blacks. That's quite a long. So it was sort of almost.
You were very young then.
I was very young then. Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's so it just shows, doesn't it, really, that it was a foregone conclusion. Really, we should also mention another score over the weekend: England 39, Australia 28.
Yes, well, and look, your great New Zealand correspondent predicted both of those games, that New Zealand would beat Wales and England would beat Australia because
got a good coach.
Yes, the coach is one thing. Secondly, is the fact that I think Australia might have been a bit cocky, having beaten England in the World Cup last year. Thought, oh well, we've got their measure, but brand new coach, new teams sort of on both sides, and it was a good game.
Well, look at that. We did a couple of minutes on sport there, which is good because I'm sure a lot of people are disappointed when they hear about Balls Radio and they think it sounds like a sports podcast, because it sort of does, doesn't it? So they tune in and then we talk about everything but sport. It's either
but we're talking New Zealand sport. I mean, it's a religion. I tell you.
Balls Radio is either a sports podcast or it's a medical program on testicular health, isn't it? One or the other. I mean, but here we are talking about everything but those two things. Look, this is going to go down well with the popular press in Australia. Air New Zealand is to sell most of its stake in Virgin Australia to the Chinese, so long as the deal is done, so long as the regulator in Australia approves.
And in China, which it needs to go before, but I think that's a foregone conclusion. But yes, New Zealand did have its Air New Zealand had its world famous dummy spit with Virgin, sort of saying, look, we've been pumping money into Virgin for years now, and you're not really making any money. The airline itself is going remarkably well, and it's highly regarded, and it puts on a good service, but not much in the returns department, and Air New Zealand felt that its money could be better used elsewhere. So it said it was going to sell its shareholding, and sure enough, it sold it to the Chinese group Nashan, which has its own aviation group, and this makes the second Chinese group to come into Virgin Australia over the last month or so. So it's changing the whole landscape of Virgin Australia, and Air New Zealand saying, see you later, we're just going to keep a little stake just so that we can have a voice at the table from time to time, but see you later, alligator.
A distant voice is a very small percentage they're left with, isn't it?
Yeah, very small.
But you wonder whether it's going to change too much. I mean, Virgin Australia, they're clearly not making any money because they've been selling tickets too cheap. I mean, there's a fare war that's been going on forever in domestic aviation in Australia, and the prices are just too cheap. I mean, both sides. No one's making any money out of it, and yet people are travelling. So clearly the pricing is all wrong.
Well, I don't know. The fares come up and down or whatever. But I mean, one of the interesting things is the fact that you've had a fairly stable shareholding in Virgin Australia for some time with Air New Zealand, Etihad, and Singapore Airlines. Now you've got two sort of large Chinese investors coming in. So one of the questions that people are asking is, what is Singapore Airlines going to do? Is it going to lift its stake to sort of try and compensate? So there could be, a bit to go with this story as far as it's concerned. Well, one thing sure, in New Zealand won't be a real part of it.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Getting shot of them. But the Nanshan Group, the guy who runs the Nanshan Group, or the CEO or the head honcho, whatever he's called, he's been named in corruption cases in China. He's been accused of bribing a government official to the tune of $1.6 million. So it sort of raises an ethical question, doesn't it? It's okay having Chinese investment. I see nothing wrong with that whatsoever. I mean, if it gets the best price for the airline, who cares which country the money comes from, whether it's domestic or from overseas? But if the money is created through some unscrupulous means, is it ethical to accept it and then to reward that sort of behaviour by giving them a stake in an Australian airline? It's a good question, isn't it?
Well, that's a question. I would get your Australian correspondent onto that immediately.
Well, that's me. I'm glad I raised it.
Oh, that's you, right. Okay. Perhaps you guys afford a decent Australian
but only for a week or two. Now, look, finally, New Zealand is the fourth, I find something this hard to believe, the fourth most peaceful country in the world.
The Scandinavian countries always, buddy, get in there.
For everything, though, don't they?
They win everything. Every poll, every graph, every survey, some Scandinavian countries up there in the top one or two.
So most peaceful country is Iceland. The least peaceful, surprise, surprise, Syria. So don't go there is my recommendation for a holiday or to live. But New Zealand, I am surprised New Zealand is fourth. I would have thought, look, a lot of maps don't even bother including you on it because you're just inconveniently off the edge there.
That's right.
So why wouldn't you be first?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know the rating. There haven't been too many wars in Australia, in New Zealand rather, in the last little while.
Exactly.
But one of the things that some recent article had was that even though New Zealand's the most fourth peaceful country, is it doing enough as far as global peace is concerned? Well, I would ask Iceland that same question.
Yeah, exactly. I don't see the Icelandic peacekeeping force doesn't really keep on popping up in the news. So this is the Global Peace Index. This is that's placed you fourth. Australia is 15th. And this is why I begin to wonder whether this is actually a credible report, because the UK, now you'd expect the UK to be some way down the line, but it's 47th. Which places it behind Sierra Leone, which has been through years of civil wars, now fighting the Ebola virus. The Brits went in to help them, finish off the civil war. But to say that Sierra Leone is now a more peaceful place to live than the United Kingdom, surely that's bullshit, isn't it?
Yes, I find that a little hard to believe, really. You need to look at... Well, but there again, I guess, one of the factors in there is sort of terrorist attacks. And the UK and and Paris and Orlando. These places are shooting the index down for those countries.
Yeah. So soon it'll be that New Zealand is actually the only place peaceful in the world. That'll be next year's edition.
In fact, they had some riots in Iceland. Just recently
there we are.
With the Prime Minister. So how can that be first?
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus. Yes, God, it's a conspiracy, Phil. It's a conspiracy.
There's no riots, or people just don't have the energy, do they? Really, in New Zealand, to do that sort of stuff. Besides, they're all at the rugby, so maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. Maybe we get rid of the hacker. Maybe it'll go to the top. Maybe the researchers saw the hacker, thought, oh, this looks a little bit intimidating, and that's what dropped you down to fourth place. Get rid of that, you're probably top of the league, I would have thought.
Well, we're top of the league in so many things. We just can't be first in everything, Phil.
Yeah. Now, look, I've several times on today's program I've said, well, this is it. Thanks, been nice knowing you. It's getting a bit tedious now, so we'll do. So we'll just. It has been fun. How long have we been doing this for? How long have you been our New Zealand correspondent for? From the beginning.
A little while now. That's and I think I've been largely responsible for all the awards and accolades that Balls Radio.
I think you have. I think I'll send them all over to you. I'll put them all in a box and ship them over to you.
On my wall. Yeah. Well, you won't need them over in the UK.
There'll be so many more awards coming to me when I'm over there. Absolutely, you can have these ones. Well, there we are. And all this time and research and effort that you could have put in and didn't. All
the news that's happening here, it's amazing, Grace.
I don't know how people are going to keep up with what's happening. And maybe you'll need to subscribe to the New Zealand Herald wherever you are in the world so you can see what's going on down there.
It's been a pleasure working with you, a man of your professionalism and your good looks. I don't know how you do it, but I hope all goes very well.
Well, the looks are just natural. Blame my mum for that. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And
I'm sure Balls Radio will be resurrected at some stage.
Well,
when you need the news from this part of the world, let me know.
If there is enough demand from the listener, if he writes enough times, if they write repeatedly between them, phil@ballsradio.com. We'll see what we can do. Richard, I was going to call you Richard Casmer. There we are. I'm going to stuff it up at the end. What's your name again? David Campbell in New Zealand. Good to talk to you.
Au revoir.
Well, it is very sad to be saying goodbye to everyone, isn't it, on this last edition of Balls Radio? But there again, I'm just changing hemispheres. It's not like I'm leaving Facebook or something catastrophic like that. If you do that, you are cutting yourself off from society, aren't you? Now, speaking of catastrophes, how much could go wrong from now on, do you think, around the world? If you're a Balls Radio aficionado, you probably don't relish another Conservative government in Australia, but it seems likely, doesn't it, that that's what's going to happen? Although, interestingly, from the side, comes Nick Xenophon. Nick Xenophon's party may well form the balance of power in Australia. So that's going to be interesting. Could we have a Liberal National Xenophon alliance? The LNX party. It's got a bit of a ring to it. And look, if Nick Xenophon is doing well, and has done in the past, despite the fact, his name begins with an X. He's going to have a party beginning with X. It's going to be at the very end of a very long balance sheet. But if he can do well, tagged right at the end there, then he must stand for something. Mustn't he? And the LNX alliance, what a thing that would be. No one would ever agree on anything, would they? Would they? Australia would just stagnate politically if it hasn't already. Nothing would ever get done. And I suspect, sadly, that's how Australian politics is going to continue for quite some time. Britain could be out of Europe very soon as well. It's looking more and more likely. And that's going to be curious. For example, this open border between England and the Republic of Ireland that's been there for 100 years or so. That might disappear. There's going to be a European border. I'm not sure how that's going to help the Ireland situation. Possibly Scotland as well, voting for independence. God knows why they would do that, but they're obviously in a rush to be the next Greece of Europe. Greece only without the decent weather. And England left with Boris Johnson in power. God help us all. And Trump running America. It just gets worse. The world's going mad. Very interesting times. Look, let's go back to Richard Kasmer for the last time, at least in a little while anyway. Look, I don't know what he's going to do with this time. Or you, for that matter. The Balls Radio listener. That 90 minutes of your week that you put aside for your sheer, unadulterated listening pleasure. What are you going to do now? Now we're not around. Richard Kasmer, presumably spending more time with the family. Isn't that what they say, Richard? Where when you get bumped from a corporate job, and the press release goes out saying that you're no longer working for the company, they normally say spending more time with the family. Is that what you're going to be doing?
What makes you think this is my only job?
I know you too well.
I've got a lot to do. I've got a back 40 to mow.
Yeah.
A lot of acreage here, but I've also started a job a few weeks ago being an advisor to a college/community radio station, and I do
God help them
progressive talk show. So,
and how's that going?
It's great. You're actually part of it. What I do is I cut up segments that we've done, and I pretend you're sitting in the studio with me, and then I just run it. So
it's a beautiful thing, isn't it? Why don't you just get me to call up and I'll just do it live for you? Why do you need to chop me up, so to speak?
You find yourself a home in England, and we'll do that.
We'll do that. Okay. All right. Now, look, let's go back to the crazy world of U.S. politics, and let's start with Senator David Perdue.
Yes, we've mentioned many times that the right wing's methodical use of dog whistle hate speech, calling for harm, if not death, of President Obama and his family. It's nothing new, and it's to be expected. But what's more despicable is when an elected official publicly wishes the president's death, but then wraps it in this whole cloth of the Bible. So Republican Senator David Perdue of the great state of Georgia, he was speaking at a Faith and Freedom Coalition in Washington, D.C. Faith in being reelected year after year and the freedom to say whatever the hell they want with no consequences. Well, Senator Perdue prayed for the best president of the United States by citing Psalm chapter 109, verse 8. Quote, now, we should pray like Psalm 109:8 says, said the smug senator. Let's say, let his days be few and let another have his office. So he was smug in the knowing that the rest of the verse continues with, may his children be fatherless and his wife a widow. May his children wander about and beg, seeking food far from the ruins they inhabit, which is a not so thinly veiled call for Obama's death, no matter what your religion. So quick to cover his evangelical ass, Perdue then denied any harmful innuendo, claiming it was all done in good humor. But just to be on the safe side, his PR hack came out and said that they spinned it that the Perdue was actually praying for the country, our leaders, and the president. So it's no surprise, though, that Perdue has resurrected himself from obscurity to now be a disciple of Donald Trump, Phil.
Wow, what a surprise that is. Hey, that line from the Bible, that may your days be numbered and may your children be fatherless, Thank goodness the Bible isn't like the Quran, in a vitriolic book. Thank God the Bible is just all good with no bad taste in it whatsoever.
Oh, heaven forbid, perish.
It's full of the stuff, for God's sake. Now, tell me about Gawker Media. I sort of know this. This is a gossipy online media company. Now, I noticed that their headline is tomorrow's news. As today's gossip, I should say, is tomorrow's news. That's their tagline. And the gossip is, which will be tomorrow's news, that they're going under. They're filing for bankruptcy. Perhaps good riddance.
Well, Gawker Media, it's the parent company of this really diverse blog sites like Gizmodo for techies.
Ah, right, okay. Yeah.
Lighthacker is a personal productivity site. Jalopnik is for gearheads. Well, the company itself has filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy after losing a $140 million invasion of privacy lawsuit filed by former pro wrestler Hulk Hogan after the gossip site Gawker posted a sex tape featuring the Hulkster doing the mattress mambo with a wife of his best friend, Bubba the Love Sponge. And that was filmed by Mr. Sponge as well. So
is that his real name? Mr. Sponge, and he thought, well, I need to obviously enter into the wrestling arena with a name like that.
That's what he goes by. So what's a common ploy, though, over here in this litigious society is that when a company files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, it's Chapter 11 protection, which means it keeps the creditors at bay for a while. So what they're trying to do, and this is clearly obvious, is that Gawker Media is filing Chapter 11 so they don't have to pay out the $140 million after losing an appeal. So media company Ziff Davis, they have a lot of sites under their own belt. They've reached an agreement for an asset purchase with Gawker Media. So oddly enough, not everybody is rejoicing at Gawker's forced demise. New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, whose very office is bringing fraud charges against Donald Trump for the bogus Trump University, he tweeted the other day that freedom of the press is a cornerstone of our nation. Like them or not, sad to see New York City media giant Gawker forced to the brink. But Chapter 11, though, is not always the death knell, because we've had many, many companies over here file and then rise up. American Airlines.
Yeah, it's going to say American Airlines, United Airlines as well. Yeah, it's got a few airlines.
General Motors, Macy's, lots of retailers, lots of restaurants have filed Chapter 11 and came out smelling like a rose. So if Gawker is successful, though, Hulk Hogan could stand to get a substantially less amount, pennies on the dollar, for that $140 million settlement. And it'll be up to Hulk Hogan to settle for less or just stand there with nothing in his hands.
So I'm not spending any time on the Gawker side itself, but Gizmodo and some of those tech sites that you talked about are really good sites. So, I mean, I can't imagine they'd die if Gawker does go belly up. I should imagine someone would be pretty quick to buy them, because I'm sure they are profitable concerns.
Well, that's what Ziff Davis wants, is they want that portfolio. They want everything, and not just Gawker, the blog site that got in trouble. They want the whole kit and caboodle. So.
Well, so that's folding up. And Balls Radio is, not folding just so much as packing up and being put into a crate and shipped to the other side of the world. I don't know what the technical term for that is in media speak, but it means that we will not be talking for a little while, at least on Balls Radio. You can talk to me whenever you want. Just pick up the phone. That's fine. But we will see you on Balls Radio, hopefully, again in a month or two, if we're back. And look, I don't know whether... We probably will. We can't let a thing like this die, can we?
Well, can't you broadcast from the tramp steamer that you and your family are going? You'll be on the sea for what, a month anyway? Right?
Yeah, I don't know, but there's going to be a lot of other people on that raft as well, and it's not all just over water. I mean, there's a big overland section as well. And it's difficult in those refugee camps. It's difficult to get PowerPoints, I understand. So it might be a bit difficult. And I imagine we'll be trapped in Calais for a while, trying to get in as well. So it's going to be a long journey. But look, thank you for your help over the last year.
Okay, go. I know this has been a big deal for you, and I know you and your wife and the kids have been working on this for some time. So I just want to wish you safe travels, and I don't even say best of luck, because you don't need luck. You're Phil Dobby, for Christ's sake. But this is going to be a great adventure for you guys, and I'm looking forward to you actually being closer to me physically than being down in Australia. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, good. And we won't have to try and talk through an Australian internet connection, which will make life a lot easier as well. All right. It's been great over the last year or two. How long have we been doing this for, by the way? I've lost all track of time. It's been a couple of years now, hasn't it?
It has. And I don't even know how we hooked up. How did we get together?
On Facebook, I think. I think you said something on Facebook that I agreed with, and then you agreed with what I said, and then we said, this is so much easier talking to somebody who agrees with everything I say. And then I thought, well, okay, speak such sense or such nonsense, I'm not sure which still, we'll get you on Balls Radio. I think that's how it started.
It was kismet.
It was, wasn't it? All right. Okay, I've got to go. Richard Kasmer in the United States, thank you for your time.
All right, brother, take care.
Australia's Progressive Talk.
Balls Radio, Whitfield, Dublin.
Well, we're almost at the end, but look, before we go, we of course always have What's the Big Idea with Brian Haverty on the programme, and rather than just coming out with 4 more ideas on the show this week, we thought we should play out some of the good ideas that we've had over the years on Balls Radio. Here we go.
I've got an idea.
And now on Balls Radio,
I got an idea.
What's the
big idea?
I got an idea.
What's the big idea?
What's the big idea?
Cricket is all over the place at the moment, and frankly, I like a game of cricket, but you can get too much of it, and I think it goes on too long. So I understood when they introduced 2020 cricket, I was thinking, this is great. 20 overs each. I was a bit disappointed when it was 20 overs and not 20 balls each way. I think 20 balls would have been better. But then, why not on that basis? Why not 5-5 cricket? I mean,
5-5.
Yeah, look, if 2020
so that's
cricket,
30 balls then.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's right. No, 25. 6-5, 30 balls. And maybe you should force people to change the batsman every 3 balls.
How long would a game of 5-5 last?
Well, maybe you put a time limit on it as well. It's got to be half an hour.
2020 lasts, what, about an hour and a half?
Yeah, so it would all be over in 20 minutes, I reckon.
But when I do drive, I'm a conscientious driver, and it irks me no end to see those rolling stops at stop signs. So I think they should have pop-up spikes at stop signs that only disengage and retract when you come to a full stop.
So, if you can see that there's nothing coming, do you really need to fully stop?
We have roundabouts for your kind of people, where you can go through rolling if there's no danger.
Yeah.
But a stop sign is different.
But I mean, sometimes they're just in crazy places. What do you want to do? Well, maybe we should insist that people have to stop the car, get out, look both ways, get back in the car again, and then drive off. Would you be happy with that?
That's not the law at the moment. But should it become law,
you of course will adhere to it.
I will be standing out in the middle of the road with all the other law-abiding
In
people.
the meantime, spikes that pop up until you have fully stopped the car. I'm not really a big fan of dog racing, but I know it's quite big in Australia. And you've got very fit dogs racing around the track. But you see their owners, and they are all fat. I don't know if you've noticed this. They look as though, the dogs and owners are supposed to look like each other, but they don't. You've got a very lean whippet or whatever it is, and then you've got a very, fat dog owner.
Wheezing along behind.
Well, they don't, of course. That's the point. They're just standing there at the track, knocking their beers back. I reckon that the game would be more entertaining if the dog races, if the games were conducted where all the dogs had to be on a leash. So the owner would have to run along with the dog around the track.
Fridge cam that I can access from my phone or a tablet.
All right, okay.
So I can check to see what's in the refrigerator without getting up off the sofa.
You lazy bastard.
That's actually how I thought of it first. But then it dawned on me. Like a light coming on in a refrigerator.
Well, it's not
when the
of course.
door's open.
Yeah, well,
no, you were saving it. We're saving power.
That is the point, of course.
Oh,
the fridge
yeah.
can. Yeah, it all falls apart.
The cam,
the
when
light
you-
with the click of the cam is there.
When activated, the camera activates the light.
Light, yeah.
That's the easiest part of this whole
that's a lot more
billion-dollar
complicated.
idea.
That's a lot more because I mean the door opens and it just trips a little switch. Somehow now you've got to have your electronic camera somehow electronically rigged to a light.
That's easy. That's the easy part. So it dawned on me that you could also use this when you're on your way home from work and you're going to do a little bit of shopping, but you've forgotten whether or not you have mustard.
Right. So obviously there's a lot of talk about the second Sydney airport. Where should it be? Do we need one? I reckon it's a bit... And the problem is that no one can agree on precisely where it should be.
Badger's Creek.
Well, okay, they have agreed that.
Have they?
But I think they might have done, actually.
Yeah,
but,
I think
but
4 or 5 times they've agreed.
That's right, but it still never gets anywhere. So maybe the answer is that we sort of share the love. And all we need to do is, in various parts of Sydney, build particularly wide roads with a fairly long straight stretch with traffic lights at the end, where when a plane is coming in, we can just stop the traffic. The plane lands, we can have a bus stop that can sort of be upgraded to sort of a mini airport terminal. If it's all domestic flights, I obviously wouldn't do it internationally. Or you could just check passports as people get off.
I'll be coming in just off the Hume Highway, honey.
Yeah, that's right. Do you want to come and pick me up? Well, maybe, we have means tested postage as well. It could go upper class and lower class.
Well, yes.
What I might have usurped you with your idea.
You can't drive into the post office, so I guess it has to be what you're wearing. If you're wearing a nice suit.
Yeah, they charge you upper class. That's right. Or, do it on the accent.
Well, the only other way is to charge by word. Right? So
right.
If you just put it through a scanner, how many words, like the old telegrams, you just pay...
I like that. What is old is new again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you could charge more, depending on, charge more for an adjective, I guess, then, you could change...
Well, yeah, I guess computers can scan that, can do a lot of character recognition, which is getting pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Brilliant idea.
Thank
you. You said earlier on the program that coming on the train here, using public transport...
I was supposed to be thinking...
Yeah, but you fell asleep.
Of the big ideas.
Right.
But I fell asleep. But it wasn't
it
a
gave
very...
you an idea.
It wasn't a very comfortable sleep, because you're always worried about, will I miss my stop? So I thought, why not have headbands made where the name of your station is on the headband, and you could just wear that when you're sitting there, and if people looked and saw the name of your station and they saw you were asleep, they'd just jostle you on the arm and say, "Excuse me, sir, I believe this is your stop."
Yeah, what a great idea.
And you could do that for other people, help them out.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking electric shocks and that sort of thing. I was thinking some sort of trigger when you're coming into the station that knows the station and knows the headband. But
that's awfully impersonal, isn't it?
And also, it is impersonal, and also
let's
it would
talk
hurt.
to each other. Let's help each other out.
What you're doing there is bringing the community together, and I like that.
Unless they say, "Oh, he's got a long way to go. I'm going to steal his wallet."
What better way than increasing spending than by having more birthdays? So if you have 2 birthdays a year, then you're going to get people out there spending money on you and on themselves and on other people. And, 2 advantages. 1, more spending, economy gets better. Secondly, people are happier because they're having more birthdays. And, you could go further and say, if you really want to help the economy, if you are a particularly friendly person with lots of mates, you could have 3 or 4. And we have the perfect device. We can base it entirely on Facebook friends. So if you've got 200 Facebook friends,
oh my gosh,
1 birthday.
Imagine
400 Facebook friends, 2 birthdays, 500
money
Facebook friends
into the economy.
Yeah, if you are 500, you get 3 birthdays, 1,000 friends, 4 birthdays. That's four birthdays multiplied by 1,000 people buying your presents. And then we could even say, to be a Facebook friend, you have to have some sort of financial involvement. You have to give a present. No one is happy about the politicians that we have.
No.
And I think the part of the problem is that we're getting politicians who want to be politicians.
Yes.
And so, they're there for all the wrong reasons. So I think we should conscript politicians. So you
drag them in kicking and screaming instead of dragging them out.
Exactly. Exactly. We should, that way we could, just like jury duty. No one wants to do it, but you do it as a service to your community.
That's right.
So we say, as a service, you get a letter in the post and say, congratulations, you are Premier for the next 2 years.
So towards the end of the term, why don't we have a politician awards ceremony where the people vote for the person that's done the best job?
A gala event. A gala.
A Polly-Oscars.
Yes. A Polly-Oscamy. No, that sounds rather too serious, doesn't it? A night of nights for politicians.
That's right.
And you think that would motivate them? That they'd be thinking, oh, well, yeah, I'm going to perform that much better because I want to get...
well, they will say it doesn't, just like the actors. Oh, it doesn't really mean anything to me.
No, it's all about
award ceremonies, but behind the scenes, I'll bet it does.
Yeah, I like that idea too.
Well, we get a lot of people that are either spending every weekend scattering ashes, or they've got all these urns of ashes all lining their shelves.
Yeah.
So they can't... Was that the dog or was that Grandma? I can't remember. And
it's hard to tell.
I thought we could just use old post office mailboxes.
Because no one's using them anymore.
No one's using mail anymore.
Yeah.
And you could keep the ashes, put a nice little label and a picture on there, and just buy a new one. They're perfect size.
Yeah.
And
so when your relative is cremated, would the postman deliver a little card to your door to say the cremated remains are in post office box 74
3270?
Yeah,
gives new meaning to dead letter office, I think.
It does, doesn't it?
Yes,
I like that. If you're rich and you've got a swimming pool, by law, that should always be made available to your neighbour who doesn't have a swimming pool. Like for example, those people at number 100 next door, they've got a swimming pool, but they never use it. My kids would love to be in a swimming pool. I think by law we should be allowed to. I mean, we could go and ask them, but it's easier if we could just point to an act of parliament.
Instead of carpooling, it's pool pooling.
Pool pooling. Yes, exactly. Yeah. You want to talk about online voting, though? How we vote?
Well, yes, I think voting, it's always, they keep shifting it around in my neighborhood. I don't know about you, but every time I vote, it's at a different place in my same neighborhood. Sometimes it's at the school, sometimes it's at the old telephone company office. I don't know, they're just trying to hide it from me, making it more difficult.
Company, right.
And I think they should just have voting booths at the pub.
Just so it's always there, that one place.
You know where it is.
Yeah.
If there's a queue, you can just go have a beer.
Yeah.
And just take it easy, vote when you want to. Go back and sit down and put a few down on the horse races.
And it also gets over because there's been that debate, hasn't there, about whether we should actually introduce voting earlier at 16. It solves that one because you can't get in the pub till you're 18.
That's right.
So they can't
perfect.
happen. Yeah, that's right. Figured that one out straight away.
I mean, it's compulsory, so let's make it a little bit easier on people.
Plus, do you think we might come out with better decision making if we're slightly inebriated?
No, not really, but look what's happened without it.
We're not doing that well anyway. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I like that. I like the cut of your jib. All right, very good. Well, mine is to do. Next one is to do with buying a house. Because I've been going through the process of looking, given up the idea of buying a house for now because it's so ruddy expensive. But it's expensive actually just even going to a house auction because you've got to have a pest inspection.
Yes.
You've got to have the building inspection, and the pest inspection. Actually, I mean, we talked last week about pests and how we should be cooking them.
That's right.
I'd quite like an appendix on my pest inspection about a couple of recipes. Termite sandwiches.
Well, bugs are in now.
Yeah,
eating bugs.
Yeah, very good for you. Very good for you. But that wasn't my point. My point was you're having all of these inspections. I think there should be another inspection that you can get. Which is a lie detector test for the real estate agent.
That could be a game show on television.
Yeah, it was. So you get all these reports together, and you go, look, it's structurally the house seems sound, but it is not worth anywhere near the amount of money that the real estate agent seems to be thinking it is, or there has been 14 previous owners rather than just one, and the last person hung himself in the living room. You get all of that would come out in the lie detector. detector test from the estate agent, who might have told you it was just a sweet little old lady who's moved to the nursing home.
Although there are a few ways to see through the lies.
Are there? Can you beat a lie detector test?
No. I'm just saying when you look at a house and you're asking if there's rising damp.
Yes.
Or if it's very damp and mildew and all that stuff. No, of course not. But if they're burning that eucalyptus oil in the living room, or they're cooking bread, that's just to mask the horrible stench of daily life in the house.
Well, maybe it's actually the real estate agent has got a body odor problem and not the house. It could be that. Have you ever thought of that?
Well, I don't think he'd be a very successful real estate agent then.
No,
would he?
No, I don't know. Maybe not. No, they've got to be all polished.
They're usually pretty polished.
Yeah.
But I like the lie detector.
Yes.
I want to see that happen.
I know. You'd probably get the same people, wouldn't you? You'd get that guy who does the pest inspection going, and can you do a lie detector test on the real estate agent? Yeah, not a problem, Governor. I'll be able to do that for you. There we are, some of the big ideas we've had over the years on what's the big idea here on Balls Radio. Actually, I couldn't find it. My favourite one was the idea from Brian that we just impose a tax on people who use their car horn. Because in Sydney, people are addicted to using their car horn for anything at all. And it would make the whole world that much quieter if we imposed a tax. Or if people can't help themselves, then the government would raise a fortune and we wouldn't have any budget deficit because the car horn tax would have brought in so much money. Just a thought. And we had loads of them on What's a Big Idea. And we've had fun on Balls Radio. Thanks for listening. If you've been a long-term listener, thanks for sticking with us through the years. If you haven't, it's the internet. You can go back and listen to them all. I'll be doing something different in a few months in the UK. Listen out for details. Send me an email, phil@ballsradio.com. Thanks for your devotion and for following us here at Balls Radio. See you soon.
Australia's Progressive Talk.